I am Chaya Hagler. I'm a birth doula, massage therapist, birth educator, prenatal coach, and I'm so excited to be introducing Bracha Goetz to all of you. She has so much to share. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, well, I think, I wrote a lot of children's books. So far, there's 38 children's books. They're all spiritual children's books. And really, they are about very deep concepts that I can explain to children in a very concrete way. So that's what I do. I take very deep concepts and I try to, in in simple terms, show children how they can understand spirituality in life, all types of spiritual things. So, and then I wrote one book for adults, and that's a memoir, a candid memoir about my life. And it's a book about how I came to spiritual fulfillment in my own life. And it's called Searching for God in the Garbage. And basically it's about how I had different food addictions and how I overcame them, and through spiritual nourishment. So that's what tonight's talk is about, spiritual nourishment. Yeah.
I know my kids love your books and I love that I love reading those books to them because they have such deep lessons and so much to learn from them. And can you tell us a little bit more about your memoir? Can you share a little bit more about your journey?
Okay. Well, one of the things that I really love to explain about is I couldn't understand how, when I was able to attain spiritual fulfillment, why that was the end of the food addictions. What did one thing have to do with the other? I really couldn't understand that. But so, like, the book is basically, it's a collection of my diaries, and then my journals. My diaries became journals, and then letters. And so basically it goes from age 12 to 32, those years. And I put like different highlights of what was happening. So you see a person's gradual development of food addictions and then the recovery from them. So you kind of actually experience it through. It's not like a normal book. You kind of go through it. And I come to the epiphany, the realization of what was going on only at the end of the book, because it was through putting it together that I came to understand how I was able to overcome the addictions joyfully through spiritual nourishment. And it's really about this. When people, like for instance, why does a person overeat? Eating is a pleasure. Like the food that we get in this world was designed to give us pleasure. It could be that food is just all gray and it has no aroma, but it was purposely designed to give us pleasure. So it's beautiful colors, an abundance of variety of different food to eat, and beautiful smells. And like, for instance, the fruit on the tree only becomes its brightest when it's ready to eat. That's one of my books, Hashem's Candy Store, is about how all the amazing things that we can learn from fruit and vegetables. So that's one of the things. It becomes ripest so that we know it's time to eat it. And it gives us the most joy when it's the most beautiful color. So food is designed to be a pleasure. But the problem is, if a person doesn't have enough pleasure in their life, then they get stuck on a certain physical pleasure. And it could be a behavioral addiction, or it could be a substance addiction. Whatever it is, a person can get stuck there if they don't have enough other pleasures in their life. So that's one of the main things I want to make clear, that the reason for addictions is is because a person needs more pleasure in their life. Um, Otherwise, a person like wouldn't be overeating because they know they could be doing something else that could give them pleasure. It's a feeling of scarcity. It's a feeling I don't have enough pleasure. So a person just keeps eating because what they're eating is pleasurable. It's meant to be pleasurable, but there's so many other pleasures, and eating too much isn't a healthy thing to do. So it's really good to expand one's sense of all the pleasures in this world. And so, would you like me to talk about the pleasure ladder? Is now a good time? No?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in just a
Okay.
moment. I want to ask you more about like some of the things that you mentioned. So when you talk about that need, would you say it's a spiritual or an emotional need, or
Right.
can it be both, or is it interconnected?
Right. That's a fantastic question. This is the thing that, for instance, a person might eat a lot of sweets because they want more sweetness in their life. You know, they're looking for some more things to be sweet in their life, so they just keep eating more sweets, you know. But that if they expand that, they will see there's so many other sweet things that they could bring into their life. And let's say a person had abuse or neglect as a child, then they really could have some emotional blockages, and then the spiritual nourishment may not be able to flow directly into their soul. So if a person has been through tremendous trauma in their life, they may need emotional therapeutic help in order for the spiritual nourishment to reach the source where it needs to go. So therefore, um, what my belief is that everybody needs spiritual nourishment. We are all physical beings. We're all spiritual beings and clothed in physical bodies. So basically, um, we don't realize that. Like, we look like we're just physical beings. It's not visible, and our souls are invisible. So it's easy to not recognize that we're spiritual beings. But that's why it's important to keep reminding ourselves of this, because it's something that we could easily forget throughout the day, that we need spiritual nourishment just as much as we need physical nourishment. And so there can be emotional blockages, but even deeper than the emotional blockage is spiritual nourishment that every soul needs in order to thrive.
Yeah, that's so true, and I really love your perspective. Can you tell us more about the human need for pleasure? Right, we all have that, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yes, everybody um, needs pleasure, and I learned that there are, oh, this is what really changed my life. Actually, it's when a rabbi who's no longer alive, Rabbi Noach Weinberg in Israel, he taught. I was searching for years, what is the purpose to life? And he explained it, that the purpose of life is to experience the greatest pleasure possible. I had never heard anything like that. And I still don't hear it so much, you know, because we don't realize that life is really for pleasure. We were put here to experience pleasure. That was our purpose for being here. Um, so, so how do we get the greatest pleasure? I also learned from this same rabbi about the pleasure ladder. It has 5 rungs on the pleasure ladder. The lowest level, the bottom level, is physical pleasures, and these 5 levels of the ladder, they correspond to the 5 levels of the human soul. So it makes perfect sense, and you can see how each one relates and nourishes each higher level of the soul. On the lowest level are the physical pleasures. And those are all the pleasures that we've talked about, like food, or it could be spending time in nature, another physical pleasure, music, all these things, there are so many examples of all the different physical pleasures, that give us tremendous joy. As we go up the ladder, the second level is love. And we're not talking about love where you have to sit and wait for someone to love you. It's love that involves appreciating another, valuing another person, or even an animal, a plant, a vegetable. It's seeing the value in another. That's what love is. And then on the third level is meaning. This is finding some meaningful things to do in life and things that help the world to be a better place, the level of meaning. Each of these brings a more lasting pleasure than the lower level. On the fourth level is creativity. When we create new things, when we do something creative, we go into a zone where time doesn't matter at all. We're in a totally different space. We're in a state of such joy when we're creating. And it also involves the level of creativity is the joy from having children too. So that all types of creativity. And the highest level is transcendence. This level we get glimpses of in this world. We get glimpses of it, for instance, on a starry, starry night when we look at we get a sense of we get a glimpse of where the universe is. That is the sense of awe that we have, that sense of transcendence. And what it is, it's when the veil is lifted from all the separateness between us and every other being and all of nature, or everything in the world, everything in the universe. It's when the veil is lifted, and we get glimpses of that in our lives. It's not a state that we can stay in forever, but it is the most lasting pleasure. It lasts beyond our lifetimes. So basically, we as we go up this ladder in our life, and we become aware that there are all these pleasures available to us. This changes our perspective completely, because then why would anybody want to just be stuck with their one thing of their addiction that brings them pleasure? They realize that there's an abundance of ways to have pleasure. So for instance, let's say a person is overeating. They can ask themselves, is it my body that's hungry or my soul? And immediately, a person's aware when they're just overeating junk. They know when they're doing it. So immediately they will know if it's their body that's hungry or is it their soul. That's a question to ask oneself with loving awareness. When a person asks themselves that question with loving awareness, they go into a state of abundance. Instead of the brainstem connects to the reptilian brain, the amygdala, which reacts in an impulsive way, in an addictive, impulsive way. So as soon as that question is asked, it expands the consciousness. And then the person can start thinking in the prefrontal cortex. It engages the prefrontal cortex, asking that question, is it my body that's hungry or my soul? And you're suddenly at a higher level, and then you are able to choose. Just with that one question elevating you, you can choose something different, whether it's turning on music, getting up and stretching and dancing, opening the window to feel a breeze come in, to feel the sunshine, or calling or texting someone lonely. Right in that moment, if you do something like that, you suddenly are no longer going to finish up the box of chocolate chip cookies or potato chips. You just lose interest in that, because you are bringing another pleasure into your life, a greater pleasure. So that's basically how it works. That is how a person is able to bring greater and greater pleasures into their life, by asking that simple question. And and this is the thing: when you bring the best way to break a habit is to add more joy, is to do it joyfully. When you are creating a new neural pathway, a new synapse in the brain, it takes like 200 repetitions to create a new neural pathway. If you do it with joy, it could happen in 10 times. You've got a new habit completely inserted into your life. And then you're a changed person. If you do it with joy, it happens so much more quickly. So there's no like real diet to do or anything like that. It involves adding more joy to one's life and the awareness of 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 nourishing one's soul. And that's it's really such a joy to do, and it's so simple, kind of like my children's books, that it seems too easy, but it's really, I just recommend everybody try it, and they will just have experienced more joy. There's nothing to lose. It's only a joy. Yeah.
Wow, wow, that is all so fascinating. I mean, everything you just spoke about, that was like a lot of all like really valuable information and stuff that we all need to apply to our lives. And I have a lot of questions, but first I want to ask you, so I hear you speaking about the soul and spirituality. What would you say to someone who doesn't connect or believe in that?
Right. So even I was brought up not believing that way. It was something that I guess my parents hadn't learned, and they were such wonderful people, but spirituality was not part of the way I was brought up. So in fact, that's why I wrote these books, because I wanted to write books that I wished I had as a child, that talked about these spiritual concepts. So one of the books is the Invisible Book, and it talks about all the things we believe in, like that are invisible, like gravity, like time, like feelings and thoughts, and even the wind. These are all things that have a powerful effect on our lives, and yet they're all invisible. So it becomes less far-fetched when we recognize that, to believe that we all have invisible souls as well. And that's how I explain it to children, and it makes sense for adults as well. It helps again to expand the consciousness, to understand that there's so many things that when I was growing up, I was bothered by the question, why do we get up each day to eat, to have energy to go to work, to make money, to buy food, to eat, to go to work, to buy food, and just keeps going? What's the purpose of it all? There's got to be more to it, you know? And what's more to it is all this pleasure that was designed for us to experience here. So forgot what my point was here, but anyway, yeah, there's just, oh, that's it, there's so much more to life that's invisible. There is so many deeper dimensions than what we see just before us, and that contains an infinite amount of joy.
Thank you for that. Can you tell me, so I heard you talking about the 5 levels of pleasure, right? You went through all of that. Can you tell me like how you came to even learn about that, how you came to apply that to your own life? What was that? What was surrounding all that?
Well, I guess, yeah, I learned it this summer after my first year of medical school. I went to Israel and I started learning. And when I met, what Rev Noach Weinberg was teaching, it changed my life. I'd been searching into different religions for years. I was always going around searching, what is the purpose to life, and never hearing the purpose of life is to experience the greatest pleasure possible. Never heard anything like that. And that opened my mind. I say, it expands the consciousness instead of the waistline, kind of, you know what I mean? It like expands, it just, wow. And it expands you to recognize that it's life before that seemed to me purposeless, and it seemed like almost cruel to live in a world that didn't have any purpose. So it was, and what a difference to think that this world was designed for us to experience pleasure. That changes everything, that there's an ultimate good to everything, and especially for people that have gone through any type of trauma, who especially as a child too, to under it they're, they don't have a good sense of this world being a good place to be in. So that perspective, that nourishment that brings really changes a person's whole outlook on life. And then they feel that, oh, I'm really am here to experience pleasure, because when a person has been through a trauma, they almost feel like they deserve to be suffering, and that's such an important shift in consciousness for a person to understand that we're really here to experience pleasure. So it basically, that was the rabbi that taught about the 5 levels of pleasure. That's when I understood that. And then more recently, I was reading different books that teach about, and in Kabbalah, really, they teach about the 5 levels of the soul. And that's when I put it together, and I realized that the 5 levels of the soul is the connection to the 5 levels of pleasure that that we can reach. And I saw how they each completely match so perfectly. So I mean, that's really how I came to recognize this. And I'm just like, I'm spending a lot of time sharing this because I think this is so valuable for everybody to uplift their life and just to have experience a tremendous amount of joy in everybody's life this way. Yeah.
Wow, it's so amazing. So let me ask you, when you talk about making change in our lives, are you talking about perspective changes or actual practical changes or both?
Yes, it's definitely both, because you have to have some in your mind. What are some things I could do instead of when I'm feeling the need for nourishment? What are the things that nourish my soul, and what can I do? Let's say a young mother is home with their children. What could they do? And let's say, especially during a time of pandemic, and they're stuck in the house and they're not going out as much. Like, even in those moments, what can a person do? You can, like I'm saying, you can always spend time in nature. That's something that's always available to us, even if we do it, just more individually or more as a family. That always uplift us. It was designed to uplift us, spending time in nature. And music, that's another thing. Always, like, if you're at home and there aren't good feelings going on, when you turn on music, everything changes. It changes the whole atmosphere. And you have to think of all these things that you could do in that moment. Practically, what can uplift you right then and there? What could nourish your soul? And gratitude, exercising gratitude, is always beneficial. When a person is feeling down and they start making a list of, let's say, I sometimes tell people, think of all the illnesses that you don't have right now, and you start enumerating them, or think of all your body parts that are working right now. It just changes your perspective. Another imagination thing to do is to pretend that you've just lost everything you have. Go one by one. You lost this, you lost this, you lost this, and then gain it back again in your mind. And you suddenly have such an appreciation for all the things in your life which may have been overwhelming you. Few minutes before that, suddenly you can start to appreciate them. It's just like, let's say you're hanging out with one of your little children and they're being annoying, and suddenly you just look at their arm, you look at their hand, you just start to appreciate how this healthy part of their beautiful body, how amazing it is, and if they came from you, how awesome. You just, can go to all kinds of amazing places while you're washing dishes, while, it's, you can go to an infinite amount of places. Even a person in prison is never imprisoned if they're nourishing their soul. We know we have examples of people like that, you know, Russian refuseniks that were stuck in jail for so many years, but they nourished their soul the entire time, so they were always free. And that's what we can always do. We always have our souls still available. If we're here on earth, then we have our souls. If we have breath, and just having gratitude for breathing, all these things, each breath, when we breathe it in slowly, it adds appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, yeah. And gratitude is huge, right? So,
Tremendous.
so yeah, my next question you sort of answered, but I'm wondering if you can go even deeper. So when feeling very overwhelmed, specifically during pregnancy or parenting, how can we apply all this?
Yeah, and maybe would you like to answer that, because you are an expert too with this? Would you
Well, I want to hear from
yeah.
the 5 levels of pleasure. You know,
Oh,
I can talk more
from the
after
5 levels of pleasure. Well, I mean, this is basically it. Let's say what physical, all the different things that you could do to bring physical pleasure into your life. Again, besides overeating, you know, there's so many different pleasures, even beautiful aromas that you could bring in, you know, different scents that are beautiful to experience. What someone's going to ask a question there. Okay. And, um, and then focusing on appreciating people, of course, the appreciating, you can appreciating your children, appreciating your husband, you know, these are all focusing on the different, that's what love is, focusing on what you value about another person. And then meaning, how do you add more meaning to your life? You have to recognize what you're doing is so meaningful. I remember that Rabbi Weinberg's wife, Rebbetzin Weinberg, she used to talk about changing diapers. Oh, she was saying this before I was even pregnant with my first child. She was teaching us it is such holy work to be changing a diaper, you know, because you're making them clean. You're elevating that person, you know, and it's like it just changes your whole perspective, you know, of when you recognize the higher purpose that you're doing each thing for, that you are not only helping their bodies to grow, but you're helping their souls to grow, you know, for your children. And of course, creativity. Sometimes when a person is pregnant, they feel so awful. And sometimes I used to be too nauseous to stand up. You know, I couldn't even stand up. And all day I had to remind myself, you are doing like the greatest thing in the universe, even though you feel like you're not doing anything because you can barely move, you know, and that is really the truth, you know. um, and so it's, and looking for moments like, because these are moments of transcendence, that's what we experience when we feel that connection with everybody and everyone. Whenever we can add that connectivity, it's the feeling of separation that gets a person into an addiction. So the more we feel connected to other people, even if it's just mentally, even in our minds, if we're just appreciating and loving other people, we're connecting. So those are all the different things that I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are great, really great suggestions. I love that. So could we delve now deeper into labor and birth? Okay, so contractions, pain. How can we bring this in when we're talking about, you know, these painful times?
Exactly, right. And it is, a lot of it is not running away from it, because if you put energy into running away from your, and that's one of the things that comes up too, with addictions. A person, like if they have an emotional blockage, they put a ton of energy into running away from it. You kind of do have to embrace it, and then recognize the purpose, the higher purpose of the pain. I think that helps a person get through um, labor and delivery. But you are the expert, so please share your wisdom. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, thank you. So I really, really see a parallel with what you're saying and how much it matters, right? How much our thought process and how we treat ourselves and and what we do to prepare for our labor and birth, like how it all really matters. And I fully believe that many times we have the fear of the unknown, right? So the more we know, the less we fear. So that's like number one. It's very important to be educating ourselves, right? And know what to expect, and also know what our options are, right? Nothing is black and white. There's so many options out there, and knowing what's right for you. And that's why I stress the importance of putting together not just a birth plan, right? We always hear about birth plan, but actually thinking through, what are my goals? So putting it into a goal perspective versus plan, because when we plan things and then things go wrong, then we end up disappointed. But when we set goals, these are goals we're working towards, but if it doesn't happen or it goes differently, then that's okay too. And that's where the next piece comes in, kind of bringing in what you're talking about, is the mindfulness approach, and how much our minds and bodies are connected, and that our thought process is so much connected. So when we prepare ourselves with tools, and and this is really applies in life, but I very much work with pregnant and birthing women, so that's why I'm talking about this. But when we prepare ourselves with relaxation techniques and coping techniques and affirmations and all these things, like what you're talking about, and then applying it during labor, and really during pregnancy, really preparing for our labor and birth, and going in it with that headspace of like, how much our experience matters, right? Our experiences in life really matter. When it comes to labor and birth, it's such a vulnerable time for us, and it's an experience that you never forget. And it's so important to really value it and prepare for it. And it also is a very spiritual experience as well. And it really impacts our future. It impacts our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with our children and our relationships, in general. So really, and our postpartum recovery. So it's really huge, and it's really vital and important to not just go with the flow, and not just like, oh, whatever happens, happens, or, so being open and preparing with all these mindset pieces, and really valuing, right? Valuing ourselves and our experiences, how much we matter, and how we are going to be left with this for the rest of our lives, right? Nobody else. It's our experience. And so it's so important to really, and this is for labor and birth and postpartum, really valuing our healing, and emotionally and physically. So applying what you're bringing up, the 5 levels of pleasure, and the spiritual fulfillment that we need. And really, it's about really making ourselves a priority, valuing ourselves as mothers, right? And so, I can go on and on, but that's really, like, I just wanted to, like, almost like share with, like, talk about with you how much, like, and I'm sure you see this as well, the parallels with like women empowerment, and the connection with, positive birth experience. It's not, and I always like to say, it's not about the individual, your individual things that happen throughout your labor and birth. It's not about, oh, this happened, this didn't happen, this did go my way, this didn't go my way. It's that overall experience, and the importance of that overall positive experience surrounding, right? So that's where our mindset and the spiritual part really comes in. And so yeah, what are your thoughts on all that?
No, beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you want to open up to questions from people, or?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to just ask you,
Okay.
before we open up to questions, I want to ask you if you have any last thoughts that you want to share on all this, and then tell us where people can reach you if they want to reach you, where people can buy your books, or where, just a little bit about that, and then we can open up to questions.
Oh, well, basically, all my books are on the Amazon author page, Bracha Goetz Amazon author page, and on there is contact information if anybody wants to reach me. I'm very happy to hear from anybody, and I just feel, that just that one question, if just that one question can remain with people, it is so valuable. When you're doing any type of addictive behavior or anything, to ask, is it my body that is hungry or my soul? But it comes up even if you're not involved with an addictive behavior. How can I nourish my soul right now? Because a person can do it no matter what they are experiencing. They are always able to nourish their soul in some way, whether, it is through opening the window, feeling the breeze, reaching out to somebody, exercising gratitude, learning some ancient wisdom, putting on music, dancing, stretching, doing something creative, whatever gets your soul to shine is what nourishes your soul. So I just really encourage everybody to do that throughout the day. Just as we need to replenish our physical bodies throughout the day, we need to nourish our souls throughout the day. And what we gain from that is infinite joy in life. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. I really appreciate it. And now, if anybody has questions, you can ask it in the chat box. I see someone's asking, can you enumerate on how the 5 levels of the soul are connected to the 5 levels of pleasure?
Oh, okay. I could. Um, it's kind of all right. I'm going to say the Hebrew words though that go with it. The lowest level of the soul is the nefesh, which is the life force, and that relates to the physical pleasures. All the because the nefesh, the life force, is the part of the soul that is connected to the body. It's connected to the human body. That's where we experience the pleasures from physical things. The second level is the ruach, the spirit. That is where love, the level of love comes in. The next level, neshama, is the breath, and that's where the level of meaning, the level of having meaning in life. The next level, chaya, living essence, is creativity, creating life. That's the fourth level. And the fifth level is transcendence, yechida. It's the level of unity, seeing the yechida, seeing the unity of the entire universe, recognizing the connectivity, and that's the highest level of pleasure. So you see, I mean, it's like an amazing connection between these 5 levels of pleasure and the 5 levels of the soul. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Okay, anybody else either can write in the chat box or you can unmute yourself if you have a question. Oh, somebody raised their hand. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry, that was by accident.
Okay, no problem. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to share or that they want to ask?
No questions?
And there's a lot of comments like thanking you
okay.
and yeah.
Okay. But
yeah.
alrighty, you can always feel free to contact either of us with any questions that you have. And it brings us pleasure to get your questions. So please don't hesitate.
Yeah, no, of course. We love questions, especially when it's stuff that we're passionate about, right?
Yes, exactly. And thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Otherwise, we'd just be talking to each other, which is wonderful. But we're so happy to share this because it just increases the vitality of everybody's life. It's just, so why not? Live my life in the most joyful way possible.
Yes, yes. I appreciate everyone who joined us. And Bracha, I appreciate you sharing all your insight and knowledge, and you have so much to share, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Chaya. You are such a welcoming person. Anybody that needs advice for anything having to do with pregnancy or birth, Chaya is such a welcoming, comforting, and warm person. Yeah, I've been to her home, and she is just such a warm, welcoming individual. So anybody can feel comfortable asking her any questions. I know that she's now because of COVID, she's doing coaching, also telecoaching. So please feel free, to contact Chaya.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
so sweet. I really appreciate it. Sharon is asking, where is the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach me. Um, well, if you email me, that's really great. brachagoetzbooks@gmail.com, and it's on my Amazon author page. Is my email address to contact me. You could also contact me through Facebook or LinkedIn, and yeah, I'd be happy to connect with you. So that would be great. You can call me also. I don't know if I'm going to give my number out right here, but that would be best first just to email me first, and then we can connect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
is your contact information here, Chaya? No.
it's not.
Okay.
My website is laboroflovehouston.com, and you can schedule consultations there with me, or email me through there. That's probably the best way. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, also Labor of Love Houston. So it will be wonderful to connect, and I love helping people to have positive experiences, or process past birth trauma so that they can have positive future experiences. So yeah, we both would be
happy for you to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us.